The space has been absolutely wild when it comes to all this shit, man. But I want to thank you for your work that you do in the DEI space.
Very important.
And yeah, man, we do need more people in the room. So before, like, while we're still on this topic, before we move on, we have a lot of people, like when we have game developers on, when we have journalists on, we like to ask the guests how they got into the space and what advice do they have for them if they want to get into your niche of the space, because there's so many different ways to get in. It's just not game dev, right? There's music, there's sound, there's voice acting, there's DEI consulting, so many ways to get into the gaming industry. So like, what advice would you have for a young Khalief watching right now, or probably somebody the same age?
Shit, so, young Kyle tells stop wearing so many damn hats because your hair's gonna fall out. But I would tell people, like, I got into the gaming industry by my the podcast was the thing that got me into the gaming industry proper. Like, of course, I had like 10 years of IT work. I did IT work when I was back home in New York. I did that for a long period of time. I was always a fan of it, and you know, fan of technology, all that kind of stuff. But like, the podcast was the thing. Creating content was the thing that got me into my first job at Intel. Okay. And then, you know, that kind of proliferated for me to be able to kind of make some moves in those spaces and network with people. Networking is the biggest part of all of it, to be honest. Like,
right.
There was the hard thing for young folks right now is like the space, especially with the pandemic. There was a big, long piece of time where networking face to face was just not a thing you could do.
Right.
Every move that I've made, every deal that I've done, every contract that has ever gotten signed is because I've shook someone's hand and looked them in the eye and told them about what I do. And you can do some of that stuff virtually, and you can continue to kind of move in those spaces, but you really got to get out there and do some of that work. I was lucky enough when I moved to the West Coast that became a little bit easier, but it is a thing where you got to go to the PAXs. You got to go to shows also that aren't just gaming endemic. Like, you should be going to GDC if you can get a press pass to go talk to developers. Go to what's the one in Vegas all the time that happens at the beginning of the year, with all the not DICE, the tech one. There's like the big tech one. CES. Like, go to CES. Like, CES. Like, all of those pieces are really important because you get to learn how to network. 2, you get to learn how to look somebody in the face and pitch yourself. And then 3, you get a chance to really hone the craft of what does it mean to be a professional doing this kind of work, and learning about those pieces. So I would say, yeah, get out there, make some dope stuff. That's an easy way now these days to kind of move in those directions. But like, you got to get your feet on the ground and got to go talk to people and let them know why you want to do this kind of work.
So another follow-up question that pertains to us, because I work a pretty high management position, and whenever I'm in meetings, I'm the only one, right? So as somebody that's in this space, and it's barely any of us, right? We know we wear many masks, right? As black folks. So how do you handle that being in these spaces?
I'll tell a really fast story. I was going back to Intel. It was a young cat who was in orientation with me, and he was saying, in that first couple of weeks, he was like, "Yo, Ka, I moved up to Oregon to be at Intel, and I want to do this work. I'm also like one person in this room in a sea of white. I'm the only black kid here, and I'm starting to feel like I need to leave and I need to dip." And I was like, first of all, don't leave because you're needed. And he was like, I don't understand what that means. And I was like, you have to understand that you bring a perspective that no one else in this room can do, or no one else in this room has. And that makes you valuable in ways you can't understand. If you start to really think about what that means, that's the way I think about my position, whether that be in the media space, whether that be in the corporate space, whether that be at a game studio. Me just being there adds value. Blackness adds value. Black perspectives add value. People forget that all the time because it is the like everybody's looking at me and I feel weird but like you gotta absorb that, and some people can't because you don't want to feel like the token, and you also don't want to feel like the person who is the representative, like we talked about. You don't want to do the Negro Highlanderism version of it either. You know what I mean? You don't want that to be the case either.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you also have to understand that like you have value through your experiences. It is a reflection of the world that you live in that you can then turn and show a mirror to people and say, oh, you're not marketing to Black people. Oh, you're not talking to people in an authentic Black voice. Again, the variations of what those may be. You're not paying attention to what's happening culturally in this moment because you don't live it. And you're not involved with it. You're not touching it. You don't even see it. Right?
Yeah.
So I think those are the things that when you think about why and what is the thing that brings you value, you're constantly evaluating what that means. And you're constantly looking at the space to say, how can I be of use here? I am a go-between a lot between our community and the gaming industry, and people don't like that, and people kind of hate on that sometimes. And it's a lot of burden to bear because I don't want to give other people a version that doesn't feel authentic. But I always lean in with the idea of I am not the representative of all of Blackness. It is not a monolith. I'm giving you Khalief, and my grew up in the Bronx in the early 80s and 90s and stuff. That is, and lived a life. Right. But here are all these other Black people that you should be talking to, and you should hire some of these people. You should pull some of these people in so that we can have a much fuller conversation across all of these different ethnicities and groups and races and people. So it's a much bigger conversation than just that. But it is the like, you have value in who you are and your experiences. Make sure you celebrate that and talk about that everywhere you go.
Ooh.
Bars.
That's beautiful.
Bars. Preach on, Khalief.
Yeah.